The air is damp and quiet, heavy with the smell of hay and something older, something that never quite leaves the walls. You open your eyes to darkness that feels alive, listening before moving. The faintest whisper of hooves shifting on straw somewhere close. The stable breathes with you, slow and steady, and in that rhythm your day begins. A drop of water falls from the rafters, hitting a wooden trough below. Another follows. Then a horse snorts, soft but startled, and you know the world is waking with you. You push yourself up from the straw mat that serves as your bed. Your tunic smells of the stables, a scent that never washes away completely, no matter how much river water you throw at it. Your hands are rough, cracked from years of rope and reins. You stretch, bones clicking faintly in the cold. The roof above creaks as if stretching too, wood shifting with the first faint chill before dawn. Outside, a sliver of silver light hangs over the horizon. Rome is still half asleep. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls too early, earning a bark from a stray dog. You rub your eyes, take in the stillness, and begin the same motions you have followed every morning for as long as you can remember. The stable's main door slides open with a low groan. Cold air seeps in, biting at your neck, carrying the faint scent of smoke from nearby hearths. You walk between the rows of stalls, running your fingers along the wooden rails, feeling each rough edge you helped repair. The horses shift and snuffle softly, their bodies casting large shadows that seem almost human in the flickering torchlight. So, before we sink deeper into this moment, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, let the light dim, let the fan hum quietly, and let's drift into tonight's story together. You reach the first stall. A mare named Livia stamps a hoof impatiently, her tail flicking as if to scold you for sleeping so long. You smile, half to her and half to yourself, whispering something that only horses ever seem to understand. Her breath steams in the cool air, white mist curling like smoke. You run your hand down her neck, the muscles moving beneath her skin like warm rope. Feeding comes first. It always does. You reach for the basket of grain and pour a measured scoop into the trough. The horses know the sound instantly, heads lifting, ears twitching. The rustle of hay follows, a small storm of motion in the dim light. It is oddly soothing, this daily symphony of animals at work and rest, all bound to the same rhythm as you. The stable itself is older than anyone remembers. It sits on the edge of a wealthy estate, far enough from the main villa that the smell of manure does not drift to the master's table. The walls are thick, built from uneven stone, patched and repatched by generations of hands like yours. Some say the foundation stones once belonged to an older temple, abandoned long ago, but no one really knows. Historians still argue whether this kind of reuse was common practice or a rare mark of thrift among landowners of the late Republic. You, of course, do not care. You only know that the stones hold the chill of night longer than you'd like. You move to the next stall, where a young colt nicknamed Felix waits, eyes wide in the dark. He's restless, too much energy for his small frame. You brush him gently, murmuring about nothing in particular, as you pull a stray twig from his mane. There's a kind of meditation in these motions. Scoop, pour, brush, pat, even when your back aches. Even when the straw sticks to your skin, you keep at it, steady as a pendulum. Somewhere outside, the first cartwheels scrape over cobblestones. The city is waking. You picture the forum coming to life, vendors shouting, fountains trickling into marble basins. You've never had time to see it yourself, but you've heard stories. One of the older stable hands once told you that the Senate steps are polished so smooth by sandals that they shine like mirrors. Another swears that if you walk past the baths at dawn, the steam smells faintly of lavender. You'd like to believe that you check the water troughs next, dipping a finger to test the temperature. Still cool, you refill them anyway. The well water comes up slow this time of year, heavy with minerals that stain the wooden buckets grey. You carry them 2 at a time, your shoulders burning. Somewhere in the shadows, a rat darts between bales of hay, vanishing like a ghost. By now, the faint orange of morning is stretching across the sky, brushing against the stable roof through the cracks. Light hits the dust in the air, making it sparkle like tiny insects frozen in flight. You pause, resting on the shovel handle, and watch it for a moment. It's oddly beautiful, this hour that belongs to you and no one else. You remember the first time you came here as a child. The stable seemed enormous then, a labyrinth of straw and shadows. You were afraid of the horses, their eyes too knowing, their breath too loud. The old master back then used to say that a good stable hand learns silence before skill, that horses trust quiet more than strength. It took you years to understand what he meant. The door creaks again, a faint shuffle of sandals behind you. It's Marcus, another stable boy, his hair sticking up like straw. He mumbles something about being late and moves to his own section without another word. You nod to him, both of you too tired for talk. You work side by side in silence, the way people do when they have nothing left to prove. By the time the sun fully breaks over the hills, the smell of the stables has changed. It's warmer now, sweeter in some strange way, as the hay releases its scent under the heat. The horses are calm, chewing lazily, tails flicking at flies that haven't quite woken yet. You sit on the edge of a barrel and take a moment to breathe. A sparrow lands on the stable door, hops once, then flies away again. You find yourself watching the path it takes until it disappears over the villa wall. There are mornings when you envy that little bird more than the richest man in Rome. You take up the broom and begin sweeping the floor, straw shifting in rhythmic waves. The sound of the bristles scraping against stone fills the air, steady and hypnotic. The stable is cleaner now, almost shining in the soft light that filters through the cracks. For a moment, it feels almost peaceful, as though the world outside has forgotten to exist. Somewhere far off, a temple bell rings. You cannot see it, but you can picture the priests lighting incense, smoke rising into the blue. Some workers cross themselves out of habit when they hear it, mixing Roman ritual with old village gestures. No one remembers the origin of. You've never been much for prayers, but sometimes, when the horses are restless and the air too still, you whisper a small one anyway, not for the gods, but for the quiet. A fringe detail most people forget. Many Romans rubbed olive oil on their horses, coats to make them shine before races or ceremonies. You've done it yourself, though it always leaves your hands sticky for hours. You wonder if the nobles ever think about who polishes their proud beasts while they sleep in marble chambers. Probably not. But the horses remember. They always do. The day ahead will be long. It always is. But for now, in this early light, surrounded by the slow heartbeat of the stable, you allow yourself a small smile. This is your world. Small, dusty, honest. Somewhere beyond the villa walls, the city begins to roar. Carts, markets, soldiers, shouts, but in here there is only breath and hoof and hay. You close the stable door halfway, not to shut the world out, but to keep this moment still just a little longer. The smell hits before anything else, a thick mix of hay, sweat, and something sour, something that clings to your clothes, even after washing. You have grown used to it, the way sailors stop noticing salt, but there are moments when it returns to you suddenly. Sharp and familiar, like a memory that refuses to fade. The horses shift restlessly again, their hooves striking the stone floor in uneven rhythm. You pick up the brush, heavy and worn smooth at the handle, and begin your first real task of the day. Brushing takes patience. You move in long, steady strokes along the mare's flank, pushing away dust and dried sweat. Each stroke releases a faint, earthy smell. She exhales deeply, half in contentment, half in resignation. You speak softly to her, the words meaningless, but the tone deliberate, a low hum meant to calm. The sound of brushing fills the stable like soft rain. The other stable hands begin their work, each in their corner. The stable feels alive now, no longer a dark cavern, but a slow-moving creature with many arms and quiet voices. Marcus hums under his breath, an old tune from the countryside. Another worker, Lucius, curses as a horse nudges him too hard. No one looks up. These sounds are part of the rhythm, like the scraping of buckets or the flutter of pigeons in the rafters. You pause to adjust the bridle hanging on the wall. The leather is cracked in places. It needs oil again. You make a note to remind the overseer, though you know he will only grunt and tell you to fix it yourself. You wipe your hands on your tunic and move to the next horse, a tall bay with a nervous eye. She shifts as you approach, her tail twitching. You stand quietly, waiting for her breathing to slow, before lifting the brush again. The dust rises in golden motes around you, catching the morning light that spills in through the half-open door. For a moment, everything seems suspended, the particles, your breath, even the faint sound of hooves. Then it all moves again, slow and steady, just as it always does. You find yourself thinking about the strange way animals seem to sense moods. Horses, especially. The calm ones will test you if you are angry. The wild ones will soften if you whisper instead of shout. Historians still argue whether ancient Romans truly believed animals carried fragments of divine spirit, or whether that was just poetic superstition. But standing here, hand pressed to the neck of a living creature that outweighs you by hundreds of pounds, it is easy to see why such ideas lingered. The morning deepens. You finish brushing, rake out old straw, and shovel manure into a waiting cart. The smell thickens, filling the air until it becomes part of it, impossible to separate. You drag the cart outside, where the ground squelches faintly underfoot. The pile near the far wall has grown taller since yesterday. It will be carted away later, dumped beyond the city edge, where farmers buy it cheap for their fields. Nothing in Rome truly goes to waste. You stand a moment outside, squinting at the sky. The sun is climbing, pale and cautious. The The city beyond the villa walls is fully awake now. Carts clattering, vendors shouting, the faint echo of hammers from a nearby workshop. You imagine all of it like a single, endless performance, everyone knowing their part without needing to speak it aloud. You turn back inside. The cool darkness of the stable feels almost kind now, like a refuge from the harsh noise outside. You move toward the far stalls, where the younger horses are kept. They are smaller, more anxious, their movements quick and uncertain. You run your hand over the wooden gate, then step inside slowly. A colt lifts its head and watches you. The brushing starts again, slow, patient. You hum a bit, not quite a tune, just a pattern of sound. The animal's breathing slows. You think about how much time you spend in this single space, how each day feels identical, yet somehow never the same. The light shifts differently. The dust falls in new ways. Even the air changes with the seasons. There is comfort in that repetition, though sometimes it feels like a quiet prison too. By mid-morning, the feeding must be repeated. Horses eat often, and you have learned the hard way that skipping around makes them restless. You haul another sack of grain from the storage room. The bag is heavy, and you brace it against your shoulder as you walk, muscles burning under the weight. You pour the feed into troughs, one by one, listening to the sound of grain hitting wood. It's oddly satisfying, like rain against a roof. As you work, a memory surfaces. An old stable hand once told you that in earlier times, Romans fed their horses a mix of barley and beans to make them strong before races. He said the same mixture was sometimes eaten by gladiators, who were jokingly called barley men because of it. You never found out if that was true, but it stuck in your mind all the same. A pigeon flutters down from the rafters, pecking at a stray kernel that rolled across the floor. You watch it for a while, its feathers iridescent in the slanted light. There's something strangely dignified about the way it struts, as if it too belongs to the daily order of things. You take a break, leaning against the doorframe, hands aching, back damp with sweat. The villa beyond is stirring now. You hear the faint clang of kitchen pots, a burst of laughter from the servants' quarters, and the rhythmic splash of someone drawing water from the courtyard fountain. Life moves outward from the center like ripples, reaching you here at the edges. The stable cat appears from nowhere, a lean, scruffy creature with yellow eyes. It whines between your legs, meowing loudly until you toss it a few crumbs from your pocket. You've never given it a name. It doesn't seem to need one. It disappears as quickly as it came, tail flicking. There's a strange satisfaction in small things like this. The smell of clean straw after sweeping, the warmth of a horse's breath against your arm, the creak of wood that tells you everything is still holding together. You wonder if the noble family who owns this villa ever notices any of it. Probably not. Their world begins at breakfast and ends with wine, not sweat and hay. A gust of wind pushes through the open door, scattering bits of straw across the floor. You watch them swirl, tiny golden pieces catching the light. For a moment, you feel weightless too, part of that drifting motion. Then Marcus calls your name, reminding you the master will be coming soon, and the moment breaks. You nod and return to work, checking bridles, tightening straps, brushing manes one last time before inspection. The horses stand tall now, gleaming slightly in the sun that filters through the high slats. The stable looks ready, or as ready as it ever does. You hear footsteps outside, firm and quick. That will be the overseer. You wipe your hands and straighten your tunic, feeling the small knot of tension that always comes before his visits. The horses shift again, as if sensing your unease, and somewhere inside that tension, beneath the smell and sweat and noise, a quiet thought flickers, a whisper of curiosity about what lies beyond this gate, beyond the walls, beyond this life. It fades quickly, swallowed by duty. You pick up the brush again, steadying your breath. The day is only beginning. The sound of boots on stone announces him before he speaks. The overseer's steps are sharp, deliberate, like the ticking of a clock that everyone in the stable pretends not to hear. You straighten your back without thinking, brush still in hand. The horses sense it too, their ears flicking, tails swishing in quiet irritation. The air itself seems to tighten. He appears in the doorway, Titus, the villa's stable master. His tunic is spotless, far too clean for someone who works among animals. His belt gleams with bronze fittings, and a ring flashes on his finger whenever the light catches it. He was once a soldier, or so he likes to remind everyone, though no one has seen him lift anything heavier than a ledger in years. Up, all of you, he barks, not looking at anyone in particular. Inspection. You and the others fall into motion, a well-practiced dance. Brushes are set down, buckets lined neatly along the wall, stalls checked for order. You wipe your hands on your tunic again, though it never helps much. Titus walks between the rows, his boots clicking on the stone, eyes scanning every detail as if searching for fault. He stops near the first stall, running his hand along the wooden beam. His fingers come away clean. A good sign, but he says nothing. He moves to the next, where Lucius is still tying a feed sack closed. You call this neat, Titus says, kicking at a loose strand of rope. You want to feed the horses or strangle them? Lucius mutters an apology, eyes low. Titus snorts, the sound short and ugly, before moving on. When he reaches you, you hold your breath. He glances over the horse you just brushed, tapping its flank with a practiced hand. The animal doesn't move. That helps. He says, pausing. Good sheen. Did you oil the coat? Yes, master, you answer quietly. He nods once, a rare gesture of approval, and continues his march down the line. You exhale slowly, letting your shoulders drop. Behind him, two younger boys carry ledgers and tablets, scribbling notes as he dictates. The villa keeps records for everything: grain, amounts, feed costs, the number of shoes replaced each month. Even the droppings are counted for sale to farmers. Rome's wealth is built on accounting as much as conquest. Titus stops near the end of the row, turning to face all of you. We have guests coming this afternoon, he says. The master's son returns from the city. His horses will need fresh water, new shoes, and proper grooming. I want no excuses. The room stays silent. No one dares nod too eagerly or look too indifferent. You all simply wait for the words that end the inspection. Get to it, he says finally. And for the God's sake, keep the cat away from the feed again. As he leaves, his ring catches the light once more, a little flash of arrogance, leaving the stable darker after he's gone. The others breathe out at the same time, like a single living creature released from a tight grip. Marcus mutters something rude under his breath. earning a quiet laugh from Lucius. You return to your work. There's a kind of strange calm that follows Titus's visits, as though the stable itself relaxes once he's gone. The horses settle again, snorting softly, hooves scuffing against the floor. You start rechecking the tack, bits, reins, and straps that never seem to stay perfect for long. Each saddle bears its own story. Some are plain leather, worn smooth by years of use. Others are ornate, decorated with bronze rivets or embossed designs. You lift one that belongs to the master's chariot horse. It's heavier than it looks. You polish the metal fittings with a rag until your arms ache. The faint reflection of your face stares back from the buckle, tired, smudged, but still there. The smell of oil mixes with the stable air, and for a while the world narrows to small motions. Rub, buff, fold, stack. It's tedious work, but there's satisfaction in seeing the gleam return to things that would otherwise rot away. Historians still argue whether Roman estates truly ran with such efficiency, or whether later writers exaggerated their order to praise the virtue of discipline. If those historians could stand here for one day, you think they'd understand how much of that order comes not from virtue, but from fear and routine. Marcus sidles up beside you with a crooked grin. Think Titus ever lifted a brush in his life? He whispers. You snort softly. Maybe in his dreams. He chuckles and returns to his post, shaking his head. The laughter fades quickly, swallowed by the endless shuffle of work. By midday, the light streaming through the cracks in the roof grows harsher. Dust floats like gold smoke, turning the air thick and shimmering. Sweat stings your eyes. You pause to drink from a wooden cup, the water lukewarm but welcome. From outside comes the sound of hooves, sharp, quick, confident. You look toward the open gate. 2 horses approach, ridden by servants from the main villa. Their tunics are finer than yours, their sandals newer, but they look just as weary. They dismount quickly, leading the horses toward you. The young master's animals, one says, wiping his brow. They've come from the city. He'll be here before sundown. You nod and take the reins. The horses are sleek and well-fed, their coats brushed to perfection. City horses, pampered and nervous. You lead them inside, whispering softly as you guide them into clean stalls. One snorts and tosses its head, unused to the smell of real work. As you unfasten the saddle, you notice the craftsmanship, gilded edges, embroidered cloth, even a small bronze charm shaped like a dolphin hanging from the reins. A token for luck, perhaps. The rich never travel without superstition. You set the tack aside and begin to brush the horse, slower than usual, careful not to scratch the expensive leather. Marcus passes behind you, shaking his head. Imagine living like that, he says, almost to himself. Never having to shovel, never smelling this place. You shrug. Maybe they smell other things. The city stinks in its own way. He laughs again, a low, tired sound, and you both go back to work. As the hours pass, the stable hums with quiet purpose. You move from stall to stall, checking feed, wiping dust from harnesses, trimming hooves where needed. The horses are calmer now, lulled by the steady rhythm of your voice and hands. There's one small superstition every stable hand here believes. If you whisper to a horse just before it drinks, it will never fall ill. You don't know where it started, but you always do it, just in case. You lean close to the horse's ear and murmur nonsense words, soft and slow. It lowers its head and drinks. A ray of light strikes the far wall, catching a spider's web in the corner. The silt glows gold, trembling with the faint vibration of wind. You stop for a moment to watch. Everything around you seems suspended again, as if the whole stable has paused to listen. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, Rome continues to move, but in here, it feels like time itself has slowed to match your breath. You run your hand one last time down the horse's neck, feeling its warmth beneath the skin. Then you step back, satisfied. The stable is ready. The sun is higher now, slanting in through the cracks of the stable roof, casting thin bars of light across the dusty floor. You squint as you move through them, carrying polished tack in your arms, leather creaking softly against itself. The smell of oil and metal lingers from your morning's work. You line the saddles along the rack, one by one, making sure each one is perfect for the afternoon visit from the master's son. You've learned that presentation matters as much as skill. A nobleman might not notice if a strap is slightly worn, but Titus will. So you go through every piece twice, tightening buckles, adjusting lengths, checking each rein for frayed edges. The horses watch you as you work, dark eyes, calm but alert. They always seem to know when something important is coming. The master's son, Gaius, that's his name, is younger than you but holds more authority than anyone here ever will. You've only seen him a few times. Once during a race at the Circus Maximus, when he boasted about his team's speed. Another time when he rode past the villa gates, laughing loudly with his friends. His horses are beautiful creatures, all muscle and motion, the kind that make common people stop and stare. You wonder what kind of life that must be, one where you wake to applause instead of orders. The thought fades quickly as you lift another saddle. There's no room for envy here, only the quiet repetition of duty. Marcus passes by carrying a bridle, whistling softly. "You think he'll actually ride today?" he asks. You shrug. Maybe he'll just want to watch us sweat instead." He grins, half amused, half bitter. Sounds about right. You both share a small laugh, then go back to your work. The laughter feels good, a tiny rebellion against the endless seriousness of the place. The sound of hooves outside draws your attention. You look toward the door and see two of the villa guards leading more horses from the road. They wear short swords at their belts, not for fighting, but for display. Everything around the villa exists to impress. Even the guard's posture feels rehearsed. You take the reins of a tall grey stallion, its coat shimmering like brushed steel. The animal tosses its head, impatient. You murmur softly, your voice low and rhythmic, and it settles. The sound of breathing fills the stable, both yours and the horses, blending until they seem the same. You lead it to a clean stall and begin to wipe the dust from its sides. Roman horse care, as you've heard, is both art and ritual. Olive oil for shine, vinegar for flies, ashes for polishing hooves. You do all three without thinking, your hands moving from habit. A few scholars claim that some trainers even used crushed oyster shells to strengthen a horse's teeth. Whether true or not, you've never seen it here. You think it sounds cruel, and cruelty has no place in real care. The stable is full of motion now. Lucius brings in buckets of water. Marcus oils the harnesses, and two younger boys sweep the floor. Each sound blends into a rhythm you know by heart. Scrape, brush, splash, clink. It's almost musical if you stop thinking too hard about it. As you work, a faint conversation drifts from outside. Two of the villa's kitchen servants walk past, voices carrying through the open doorway. They say the young master has brought a guest from the city. One says, a senator's son. Another one. The other replies, more mouths to feed. Their laughter fades into the distance. You picture them in the kitchen, surrounded by steam and shouting, and realize their world is not so different from yours. Everyone here serves someone. Everyone answers to a higher voice. You finish polishing the tack and turn to check the chariot harnesses next. They hang from hooks on the far wall, heavy and ornate. Gold rivets, deep red leather, faint traces of perfume from the nobles who use them. You clean carefully, wiping each piece until it gleams. Marcus joins you, carrying a small pot of oil. You know, he says, I heard once that the Emperor's own charioteer earns more than a centurion. You look up, half smiling. Maybe we're in the wrong business. He laughs. If you can drive a team through the Circus Maximus without dying, maybe. It's a morbid joke, but you both laugh anyway. The laughter fades as the sound of approaching footsteps echoes outside. Titus's voice follows low, commanding, prepare the bays. The master's son is nearly here. You and Marcus exchange a glance. No more jokes now. You set down the oil and grab the reins. The horses seem to feel the change in energy. Heads lifting, ears pricked forward. You move faster but stay precise. Tightening straps, smoothing manes, brushing dust from flanks. The sound of hooves grows louder outside, a steady rhythm of power. You glance toward the doorway and catch sight of a small group approaching. The sun glints off polished armor and fine fabric. Gaius rides at the front, posture perfect, expression bored. His friend beside him talks animatedly, gesturing with a hand that holds a gold-tipped whip. They dismount with casual grace, tossing their reins to waiting servants. Gaius doesn't look at you at first. He's already talking, laughing, bragging about a race he plans to enter. You wait silently as Titus rushes forward to greet him. My lord, Titus says, bowing slightly. Your horses are prepared and ready for inspection. Gaius finally glances your way. You there, he says, pointing. Bring me the grey. You nod and lead the stallion out of the stall. The horse's muscles ripple beneath your hand, the coat shining in the sun. You present the reins carefully. Gaius inspects the animal with a critical eye, running his fingers along the mane. Good work, he says absently, already turning to his companion. See, even in the countryside they can keep things in order. The compliment is casual, almost careless, but it lands heavy. Titus nods proudly, as if it were directed at him. You keep your face still, saying nothing. Gaius swings himself into the saddle with practiced ease. The horse moves forward, hooves striking the ground in a perfect rhythm. He circles the courtyard once, his friend watching with approval. You can't help but admire the sight, even knowing the arrogance behind it. The movement, the strength, the sound, it's all beautiful in its own way. When Gaius finally dismounts, he tosses the reins back without looking at you. Have them ready again at sunset, he says, already walking away. Yes, my lord, Titus answers quickly. The nobles disappear toward the villa, their laughter echoing down the path. For a long moment, no one moves. Then Titus exhales sharply and claps his hands. Back to work, he says. There's always more to be done. You return the horse to its stall, feeling the pulse of heat still in its skin. You run your hand along its neck, whispering a quiet reassurance it doesn't need. The stable feels calm again, now that the noise has faded. The smell of hay and oil lingers in the air, familiar and grounding. You take a deep breath, letting it fill your lungs. The day is far from over, but for a brief moment, everything feels in balance. The animals, the work, the rhythm of your breath. Outside, the cicadas begin to sing, their steady hum blending with the faint rustle of straw. The light grows softer, and you know the next phase of the day is coming. There will be more orders, more labor, more silence. But for now, you let yourself stand still in the warmth and watch the dust drift lazily in the golden air. The heat has thickened now, pressing down on the stable roof until even the horses seem to sigh under its weight. You wipe the sweat from your brow with the back of your arm and squint toward the villa gates. Dust rises in the distance like a pale curtain. A rider approaches, galloping hard. You know that rhythm, the hurried sound of someone carrying news. The rider bursts through the entrance, moments later, cloak torn, face streaked with dirt. His horse is trembling, foam streaking its mouth. You can tell from the way the animal stumbles that it has been pushed too far. Titus appears from the shade, his voice sharp. "Easy there, soldier. You'll kill the beast before your message reaches anyone." The rider slides from the saddle, nearly falling, and thrusts a wax-sealed scroll into Titus's hand. "From the city," he says, between breaths. For the master himself, Titus snatches the message and waves for a servant to take it. Then he turns to you. "See to this animal," he says. "Now, you move quickly, catching the reins before the horse can bolt." Its sides heave, breath rasping loud and hot. You lead it toward the trough, speaking softly as you walk. The horse's eyes roll white for a moment before it finally lowers its head to drink. The smell of sweat and dust is thick enough to taste. You run your hand along the animal's neck, feeling the skin quiver under your palm. The foam around its mouth clings like soap. You grab a rag, dip it into the trough, and wipe it clean, careful not to startle it. "Easy, friend," you murmur. "You've done your part." The rider slumps against the wall, watching. He looks young, barely more than a boy, with the hollow eyes of someone who's seen too much road and too little rest. His sandals are worn nearly through. You offer him water from your cup. He nods in thanks, drinking greedily. "You came from Rome?" you ask. He wipes his mouth and nods. "All the way from the Forum. I've been riding since sunset yesterday." You whistle softly. "That's a long way to run a horse." He gives a tired laugh. The master pays well for speed. You glance back at the exhausted animal and think about what well means when someone else does the work. Still, you say nothing. You've learned that in this world, silence is safer than truth. Once the horse calms, you lead it to an empty stall. It limps slightly, one hoof striking unevenly. You crouch to check. A loose shoe, bent from the strain. You'll have to fix that before nightfall. You fetch a bucket of water and sponge its legs, the dirt washing away in streaks of brown and grey. Historians still argue whether messengers of the Roman Empire truly carried cursus publicus, tokens, small lead badges granting them right of passage on official routes. You've never seen one yourself, but you've heard the old rider stories. The boy doesn't wear one. He's probably a private courier, which means he carries words, not orders. By the time you finish, the horse is calmer, its eyes softer. You give it a handful of oats and a final pat before stepping away. The rider thanks you quietly, already preparing to leave again once his horse is fit to run. You watch him for a while, wondering what kind of life that is always moving, never belonging anywhere. Then again, maybe he envies yours, rooted and predictable. Titus returns, face unreadable. The message was about taxes. He says to no one in particular, always taxes. Rome's hunger never ends. He spits into the dust, muttering, they bleed the countryside dry to feed their games. He catches your eye, realizing he's spoken too freely, and straightens. Keep that to yourself, he says. You nod. You will. Everyone here knows when to hold a tongue. The afternoon stretches on, heavy and slow. The heat turns the air into a shimmer, and even the flies move lazily now. You work in half silence, mending the damaged shoe with careful hammer blows. The sound rings through the stable, echoing like a heartbeat. Each strike releases a sharp, metallic scent that cuts through the smell of hay. Marcus appears with a cup of watered wine, handing it to you with a grin. For the craftsman, he says, you take it gratefully. Don't tell Titus, he'd just want some himself, Marcus replies, smirking. You both drink in silence for a moment. Outside, the faint hum of conversation drifts from the villa. The master must be discussing the message, weighing numbers, planning who will pay. You try not to think about it. The world of silver and parchment belongs to them. Yours is built from rope and straw. After the shoe is fixed, you lead the horse out again, testing its gait. It steps carefully, still sore but steady. You run a hand along its neck and whisper, better. It nudges your shoulder as if agreeing. A strange peace fills the stable again. The worst heat has passed, and a faint breeze seeps through the cracks in the wall. The smell of dust fades, replaced by the faint sweetness of hay. You sit on the edge of a trough, letting your mind drift. You think about how this same scene must have played out for generations. Hands like yours cleaning horses, patching shoes, listening to the wind. People whose names no one remembers, whose sweat helped the empire move. Some say that every victory in Rome began with a well-fed horse. You believe it. A quirk of Roman life most people forget. Couriers sometimes rubbed vinegar on their horses' hooves to toughen them before long rides. You've tried it once. The smell was awful, but the old man who taught you swore it worked. Maybe it's superstition, or maybe Rome is built on small tricks like that, things only the workers know. The light shifts again, turning golden. You hear laughter from the road, the younger servants returning from the fields. They carry bundles of herbs and vegetables, the smell sharp and green. One of them tosses a handful of mint toward the stable door, saying, "It keeps flies away." You scatter it near the stalls, and for once it seems to help. As the shadows grow longer, the rider finally mounts again, his horse steadier now. He nods his thanks once more. "You've got good hands," he says. "Just habit," you reply. He smiles faintly. Habit keeps the empire alive. Then he's gone, hooves fading into the distance, swallowed by the same road that brought him here. You stand there for a while, watching the dust settle in the fading light. The stable feels quiet again, the horses shifting softly in their stalls. You take a long breath, the air warm and heavy with evening. Soon Titus will call for water to be fetched again, for the nobles' horses to be brushed and oiled once more before sunset. But for now, there's a moment, a small, precious pause where nothing is demanded of you. You lean against the stable post, eyes half closed, and let the silence stretch. Somewhere nearby, the cicadas start again, their hum slow and steady. The horses flick their tails in rhythm. For a fleeting second, you feel the world hold still. Then the breeze moves again, the light shifts, and the day continues its slow march forward. By late afternoon, the air begins to cool just enough to move again. The heat loosens its grip on the world, and the stable breathes easier. Titus calls out that 2 of you must go to the market. More feed is needed before the next delivery from the estate. Granary arrives. You and Marcus are chosen, as usual. He groans, muttering something about Titus being allergic to work, and you both start down the dusty road toward the marketplace. The sun sits low, stretching your shadows across the path. The sound of cicadas fades behind you, replaced by the hum of the city's outskirts. Rome's countryside is alive in its own way, with scattered villas, olive groves, and the faint smell of smoke drifting from bakeries and blacksmiths' forges. You walk beside a cart, creaking under its load of amphorae, the driver nodding in passing. The road to the market is familiar. You've walked it hundreds of times, though it changes with the hour. Mornings smell of dew and manure, evenings of roasted meat and spilled wine. Today, it carries the scent of dust and fruit, figs, perhaps, or dates from traders near the forum. As you approach, the noise rises, laughter, bargaining, shouting, the clatter of wooden wheels. The Roman marketplace is a world unto itself, loud and colourful even in the countryside. The stalls stand under faded cloth awnings, their owners calling out prices in practiced rhythm. A flock of pigeons scatters as a child runs past carrying a basket of bread. Marcus grins, his eyes already scanning for the wine cellar. "We could just say we were delayed," he says, half joking. You shake your head, though the thought is tempting. "You remember what happened last time?" He laughs. "I remember the wine was worth it." You push deeper into the crowd, searching for the grain vendor. Your sandals scrape against the cobblestones, the heat still radiating up from them. Merchants shout about olives, honey, and salted fish. A man with painted jars claims to sell miracle ointments. Another offers amulets shaped like tiny horseshoes for good fortune on the road. He says, Marcus buys one, mostly to tease you, and hangs it around his wrist. You finally find the feed merchant near the far edge of the market. His stall smells of barley and hay, the scent somehow comforting amid the chaos. You greet him with a nod. He knows you by sight, to stable hands from the villa that always pays late but pays in full. "Back again," he says, scratching his beard. "You folk work those beasts harder than anyone around here." "Not by choice," Marcus mutters, earning a grin from the man. You count out a handful of copper coins, enough for 2 sacks of feed. The merchant measures the grain into thick burlap bags, tying them shut with twine. You lift one onto your shoulder, the weight familiar. As he works, he talks, as merchants always do. They say the emperor plans another grand race at the circus. All the city stables are in a frenzy. Prices are going up again. You nod, pretending interest. It's a game of listening, not speaking. The merchant seems glad to have an audience. Historians still argue whether these races are good for the people, he says, repeating something he's probably overheard from a scholar. They call it the bread and the circus. Feed them, distract them, and they'll never notice their chains. You smile faintly. Sounds familiar. The merchant laughs. Aye, lad, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You thank him and sling the second sack over Marcus's shoulder. The path back to the villa feels longer with the added weight, but the sun is lower now, soft and forgiving. The breeze carries the faint sound of distant bells, maybe from a temple, maybe from a herd being led home. Halfway back, Marcus suggests a detour. The river's close. Just for a moment, you hesitate, then nod. A small rest won't hurt anyone. You cut across a narrow path lined with olive trees, their silver leaves whispering in the wind. The smell of water reaches you before the sight does cool, mineral, and alive. The Tiber flows wide and slow, its surface catching the last light of the day. You set the sacks down on the grass and sit beside them. Marcus stretches out with a groan, dipping his feet into the shallows. The sound of the current is steady, calming. You lean back on your elbows, watching the reflection of the sky ripple. The colors shift from gold to pink to a faint violet. It's beautiful in a quiet way, not the marble and gold beauty of the city, but something humbler, softer. I used to think I'd leave this place someday, Marcus says suddenly. Go to Rome, work in a real racing stable, maybe even see the emperor's horses. You still could, you say. He shakes his head. Too old now, too many debts. My mother says the gods put me here for a reason. You chuckle. Maybe they put you here because you the only one who can keep Titus from shouting all day. He grins. Then the gods must hate me. The two of you fall into silence again. The water moves gently, carrying tiny leaves and bits of straw downstream. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks, answered by another further off. The rhythm of the river seeps into your bones, a reminder that even this life, with all its routine, has its moments of peace. You pick up a small stone and toss it into the current. The ripples widen, overlap, and fade. That, you think, is how days pass here, each one blending into the next, until you can hardly tell where one ends and another begins. A curious thing, the Romans believed rivers had their own spirits, guardians of flow and memory. People would toss offerings into the water, coins, bits of bread, flowers, hoping for safe travel or a good harvest. You glance at Marcus, who's dozing now, and quietly drop a small pebble into the stream, just in case. When the sun dips lower, you gather the sacks again. The walk back feels slower but easier, your mind lighter. The villa's walls come into view, glowing faintly in the sunset. The air smells of cooking, garlic, herbs, roasted meat, the scent drifting from the servant's kitchen. By the time you reach the stable, the horses are restless again. Titus is nowhere in sight, but his voice echoes faintly from the direction of the main house. You and Marcus unload the feed, storing it neatly in the corner. The light has turned orange and soft, dust glowing in the air like floating gold. You can hear laughter from the villa courtyard. Somewhere, music begins, a lyre, played lazily. The tune simple and familiar. You lean against the stable door for a moment, catching your breath. The world feels slower here at dusk, as though time itself pauses to rest. Then you hear a hoarse snort inside, impatient. Work calls again. You pick up the broom and start sweeping the aisle, your body moving on instinct, the rhythm of the day continuing. The sun slips below the horizon, leaving only a faint trace of pink in the clouds. The river's calm lingers in your mind. The day feels long but whole, like a circle drawn in dust, complete, quiet, unremarkable, yet somehow beautiful. The path to the river stays in your mind even after returning. The sound of the current, the smell of wet earth, the soft hum of evening, all of it lingers while you sweep the stable floor again. But now the rhythm of work has shifted. The sun is sinking fast, shadows lengthening across the walls, and there is one small mercy left in the day. Titus has sent you to check the river troughs, the ones built to catch overflow from the stream that runs past the villa. It's not a chore you mind. In truth, it's a small escape, an excuse to be alone again for a few minutes before night settles. You grab a wooden bucket and step outside. The air is cooler now, soft with twilight. You follow the same narrow path as before, the one lined with olive trees, except this time you move slower. The sky above burns in faint orange, fading into violet, and you can see the first thin star glimmering near the horizon. Your sandals scuff against the dry soil. Each step feels lighter than the last. At the riverbank, the world feels different. The noise of the estate fades until only the sound of water remains. You crouch down and dip your bucket, watching ripples stretch out across the surface. The reflection of the trees quivers in the current, bending with each breath of wind. The air smells faintly metallic, like wet stone. You watch a few reeds sway at the edge, their tips brushing the surface. A frog jumps nearby, plopping into the shallows. You smile, sitting back on the grass. For a few moments, you allow yourself to do nothing. You close your eyes, listening. There's the steady sound of water against stone, the slow crackle of insects waking for the night, the distant call of a bird heading home. The simplicity of it feels like a secret, one you wish you could keep to yourself forever. You think of how many people must have stood at this same river over the years. Farmers washing dust from their arms, soldiers crossing on the way to campaigns, children skipping stones. The Tiber has seen everything, and it remembers nothing. There's something strangely comforting in that. You glance down at your reflection, faint and trembling in the water. The light catches your face in ripples. Not the face of a noble, not one carved into marble someday, but a worker's face, the kind that fades quietly into history. You imagine for a moment that someone, centuries from now, might wonder what your days were like, how your hands smelled of hay and oil, how you watched this same river and thought about nothing at all. A small sound behind you breaks the stillness. You turn and see Marcus approaching, carrying a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. "Knew I'd find you here," he says. "Brought dinner before Titus eats it all." You laugh quietly. He doesn't eat bread. He eats complaints. Marcus grins and tosses you half the loaf. You break it apart, crumbs falling into the grass, and eat in silence. The bread is coarse, but after a day like this, it might as well be a feast. After a few bites, Marcus leans back, watching the last traces of light fade. "You ever think about leaving?" he asks softly. You glance at him, unsure. "Leaving where?" "Here," he says, gesturing at everything, the stables, The villa, the endless fields. Just gone. Start over somewhere new. You think about it for a long moment before answering. Sometimes, but then I wonder where I'd go. Every road leads back to someone else's stable. He nods slowly. You sound like an old philosopher. You chuckle. Maybe I'm just tired. You both sit quietly again. The first real night breeze rolls over the grass, cool and fragrant. It carries the smell of damp reeds and distant smoke from the kitchens. The stars are clearer now, scattered across the purple sky. One of them flickers brighter than the rest. Jupiter, maybe, or Venus. The Romans say those lights are gods watching over us. You wonder which one is watching tonight. A curious detail you once overheard. Some Romans believed the Tiber itself was sacred, its water blessed by the gods. People would leave offerings at its edge before long journeys. You look around, half tempted to leave something small, a coin, a fragment of bread, but you have neither to spare. Instead, you whisper a quiet thought into the air. It isn't quite a prayer, more like gratitude. The water glows faintly in the moonlight now, a thin silver ribbon twisting through the dark. You can see small ripples where fish break the surface. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots. Marcus breaks the silence again, his tone lighter. You think the nobles ever come down here? You laugh softly. Only if they drop their wine and need someone to fetch it. He laughs too, and the sound feels easy. For a moment, you both forget where you are, who you serve, what waits back at the stables. The world shrinks to the river, the stars, and the smell of grass. Eventually, you stand, brushing dirt from your tunic. Come on, you say. Titus will think we drowned. You fill the bucket one last time and start back toward the villa. The walk feels quieter now, as though the whole countryside has exhaled. The frogs keep singing, their voices echoing faintly through the fields. Marcus hums a tune under his breath, slow, meandering, the kind of song you hum without thinking. When you reach the villa gates, the lamps are already lit. Their flames flicker against the stone walls, casting long shadows across the ground. The air is cooler here, heavy with the smell of baked bread and faint smoke. Inside the stables, the horses are calm, their breathing soft and steady. You pour the fresh river water into the troughs, watching it ripple under the torchlight. The animals step forward one by one, drinking with quiet grace. You run your hand along one's neck, feeling the warmth of its skin beneath your fingers. The peace from the river follows you here. Even the constant creak of wood and rustle of straw feels slower, gentler. You glance at Marcus, who's already half asleep on a bale of hay. His head lolls forward, the half-empty breadcloth still in his hand. You shake your head and smile. Lazy philosopher, you murmur. The horses shift softly, tails flicking in rhythm. The world hums in balance for a moment, not perfect, but whole. You find a seat by the open door, watching the last light fade from the sky. The river is only a few hundred steps away, yet it feels like a different world entirely. A reminder that beyond this endless work, there are places where time slows down enough to breathe. You close your eyes for a moment, hearing both the distant trickle of water and the quiet breathing of the horses. Together, they sound almost like music. And for the first time all day, you let your shoulders drop, your breath steady, and your thoughts drift toward nothing. By the time morning turns into the thick weight of afternoon, The air inside the stable grows heavy again. The earlier calm of the river feels distant, replaced by a dry, sticky warmth that makes every breath taste faintly of straw. The horses shift and stamp their hooves, irritated by flies that seem to multiply out of thin air. Even the stable cat, usually bold, hides in the shade under a trough, tail flicking lazily. You move slowly now, not because you want to, but because every motion feels dragged through syrup. The broom scrapes the floor in slow, deliberate strokes. The grain dust rises in lazy spirals, catching the light like golden smoke. The sound of your sweeping mingles with the low hum of insects. It is a kind of heat that makes the world smaller, softer at the edges. Marcus mutters from across the aisle. The sun could cook a man alive today. You grin faintly, then you'd finally be useful, roasted and seasoned. He laughs weakly, wiping sweat from his brow. Careful, Titus might serve me to the horses first. The joke dies into quiet. You both know Titus's temper sharpens with heat. He's in the far end of the stable now, pacing near the tool rack, barking small corrections that no one listens to. He ice and tea cruel, exactly. Not in the way some overseers can be, but there's something in him that turns bitterness into habit. You've long stopped trying to understand it. You pick up a small rake and begin turning the straw near the stalls, letting air flow beneath it. The horses seem to appreciate it, snorting softly as they watch you. One of them, an old chestnut mare named Alia, nudges at your shoulder as you pass. You pat her neck gently. Easy, old girl. You've seen more summers than Titus himself. She exhales warm air against your arm. The smell's sweet with hay and dust. Somewhere outside, a cicada begins its endless cry. The sound drills through the stillness, shrill and rhythmic. You close your eyes for a second, letting the sound become background, like the beating of a clock. Historians still argue whether the Romans truly built their rural estates for peace or profit. Some say they were retreats from the chaos of the city. Others insist they were machines of production, run by the sweat of the poor. You think about that sometimes, while raking straw or oiling tack. This place feels like both beautiful and burdened, quiet yet humming with invisible demands. The smell of manure grows stronger as the heat deepens. You grab a shovel and begin clearing the piles near the stalls. It's not elegant work, but it fills the hours. Each motion feels familiar, practiced, even meditative. There's comfort in the rhythm of physical labor, in how it leaves little room for thought. When the cart is full, you wheel it toward the back gate where the compost heap grows like a strange monument. Layers of old straw and dung baking under the sun. Steam rises faintly from its top, the smell sharp but earthy. You dump the load and stand there for a while, hands on your hips, breathing in the strange satisfaction of completion. A group of flies circles near your face. You wave them away lazily and squint up at the sky. The blue is so bright it almost hurts. You think of the river again, cool and dark beneath the olive trees. You remember an old superstition the workers once told you, that if you whisper a wish into a horse's ear during the hottest part of the day, the gods will hear it out of pity. You don't believe it, not really, but something about it feels worth trying now. You step back inside and approach Aaliyah again. Her ears twitch as you lean close, your voice barely a breath. "Wish me a cooler day," you whisper. She flicks her tail in reply, and you laugh softly. Close enough. Marcus sees you and shakes his head. Talking to horses again. They listen better than you do. True, he says, grinning. You sit on a low stool, wiping your hands on your knees. The air hums with the weight of the afternoon. The world outside seems to shimmer, the distant hills flickering in the heat like mirages. You can almost hear the sun itself, a low, slow hum above everything. From the villa courtyard comes the faint clatter of dishes. Lunch for the household, you think? You and the other workers will get what's left later. Usually barley bread, cheese that sweats in the heat, and watered wine that tastes faintly of metal. You don't mind. Hunger is different here. It isn't absence, but routine. Marcus stretches, yawning. After this, I'm sleeping right here on the floor. You shake your head. If Titus sees you, he'll make you scrub the troughs again. I'll dream of scrubbing them, he says, eyes closing. You chuckle quietly, setting aside the rake. The silence deepens until it's broken only by the faint rustle of straw and the rhythmic breathing of the horses. Time seems to move differently in this kind of heat, not forward or backward, just around, circling itself. You take a moment to study the stable around you. The walls are streaked with age, the wood darkened by years of oil and smoke. The beams overhead are carved faintly with initials, names of workers long gone, each letter worn smooth by time. You run a finger over one of them, tracing the curve of an old M. Maybe Marcus's father, maybe someone else entirely. A soft sound draws your attention, the faint pluck of a lyre drifting from the villa. Someone is playing again, the same lazy tune from last evening. The notes float through the air, gentle and melancholic. You listen, letting the melody sink into you. It's a simple rhythm, the kind that could play forever without ever ending. There's something strange about how such beauty can exist beside so much dust. You've seen nobles ride through the streets on horses you've brushed, watched them smile as crowds cheered, then return here to leave you with the mess. But the horses remember you. They know your hands, your voice. That is enough. A small detail most people forget. Romans believed the sound of music soothed animals. Some stables even hired musicians to play softly before races, thinking it calmed the horses' nerves. You smile faintly. You can see the sense in it. The tune fades. The air cools slightly, though the smell of sweat and hay remains. You pour yourself a little water from the bucket and splash it over your face. It runs down your neck, cooling your skin for a brief, perfect second. Marcus finally stirs. Is it time yet? Almost he groans, standing. The sun moves slower when you're waiting for supper. You grin. Everything does. You begin checking the stalls again, making sure the feed is ready for the evening. The horses shuffle quietly, patient as ever. The light in the stable has turned orange now, slanting through the high slats and painting everything in a warm glow. The dust glimmers in it like tiny embers. Outside, you can hear the first faint roll of thunder, far away, small but real. The change in air feels instant, as if the world has taken a deep breath. You step outside for a moment, staring at the horizon. Dark clouds gather beyond the hills, heavy and slow. Rain, Marcus asks, coming to stand beside you. Maybe, you say, if we're lucky. The smell of ozone drifts in, sharp and sweet. A breeze follows, cool against your face. For the first time all day, you don't feel weighed down. The world feels alive again, waiting for the first drop. And for a moment, you think the horses are waiting too. The first drop hits the stable roof with a sound like a fingertip tapping wood. Then another, then another. The rhythm is uneven at first, as if the sky is testing its voice, before deepening into the steady patter of rain. Dust rises from the dry earth in soft grey curls, and the air cools in an instant. You stand near the open door, breathing in the scent of it, wet soil, hay, and something faintly metallic that feels alive. Marcus laughs softly beside you. Well, the gods heard your horse. Looks like. You smile. I'll have to thank her later. The rain falls harder now, drumming against the roof in waves. The horses stir, ears flicking, hooves shifting nervously. You move among them, whispering as you go, running a calming hand along warm necks. They relax slowly, reassured by the rhythm of your voice. It's strange how icily they trust you, even in thunder. A flash of lightning cuts through the open doorway, white and sudden, followed by a low roll of thunder that shakes the beams overhead. The smell of the storm thickens. You pull the door halfway closed, just enough to keep the worst of the rain out while still letting in the cool air. Rain in Rome is not unusual, but it always feels like a small miracle when it comes after long heat. It darkens the straw, deepens the colors of the wood, makes every scent stronger. The horses seem to breathe easier. Even the flies vanish. You and Marcus move to check the outer stalls, the ones near the back where the roof sometimes leaks. The far corner already drips steadily into a small puddle. You grab a bucket to catch it, the sound of water filling it like a heartbeat. Marcus mumbles about fixing it tomorrow, but you both know Titus will call it good enough for now. The rain continues for a long time, steady but gentle. The light outside shifts to a dull grey, then darker still as evening begins to fold in. You take a moment to lean against the wall, letting the cool, damp air settle into your skin. The smell of wet hay mixes with the earthy musk of the animals. It's comforting, grounding. A sharp sound breaks through the calm, a loud thud followed by a shout. You and Marcus freeze for half a second before running toward the noise. It came from the far stall where one of the younger boys, Flavius, was supposed to be feeding the mares. When you reach him, he's on the ground, clutching his leg, pale with shock. The mare above him stamps and snorts, eyes wide. She must have been startled by the thunder. You can see the imprint of her hoof on his thigh, dark and swelling fast. Marcus kneels beside him. You all right? Flavius grimaces, teeth clenched. It hurts. You look at the leg, not broken. You think, but badly bruised. He won't be walking right for a while. You grab a rope and gently loop it around the mare's neck, murmuring softly until she settles again. The horse's sides heave, nostrils flaring. You stroke her muzzle. Easy, girl. Not your fault. Marcus helps Flavius sit up, supporting him under the arms. The boy winces but manages to stand on one foot. You guide him toward a bench near the door where the rain's cool mist drifts in. He leans back, eyes closed, breathing hard. You fetch a rag and soak it in the rainwater, then press it gently against the bruise. He hisses but doesn't pull away. You're lucky, Marcus says quietly. A little higher and she'd have taken your knee. Flavius nods, still pale. She got scared. You glance toward the horse, who now stands calm and quiet, chewing hay as if nothing happened. The moment has passed, but the echo of it lingers, that sharp, chaotic sound breaking the gentle rhythm of the day. Titus appears a few moments later, drawn by the commotion. His face is hard at first, then softens when he sees the injury. "Foolish boy," he mutters, though his tone carries more worry than anger. "Stay off it for now. We'll need you tomorrow." He turns to you. "Keep an eye on the mare, and remind everyone no feeding during storms. They sense the thunder before we do." "Yes, master." He leaves quickly, boots splashing through puddles outside. The rain has slowed to a drizzle now, a soft patter-like fingers on parchment. You sit beside Flavius, handing him a piece of bread from your pocket. He takes it silently, chewing in small bites. "Hurts less already," he says after a moment. "Good," you reply. "Means you'll live to get kicked again." That earns a laugh from Marcus. Even Flavius smiles a little. You sit together for a while, the three of you listening to the rain fade. The horses resume their slow movements, hooves shifting in the straw. Somewhere outside, the first frogs start croaking again, as if nothing had happened. There's something strange about how quickly calm returns after chaos here. One moment is noise and panic. The next is silence, as though the stable itself knows how to heal. You watch the horses for a while, admiring their resilience. They remember fear, but do not dwell in it. People could learn from that. A scholar once said that Romans respected horses more than servants because horses carried their honor into the arena. You think about that sometimes, how people bow to animals that will never bow back. Still, you don't resent it. The horses, at least, are honest. Flavius dozes off against the wall, his face peaceful now. Marcus yawns and stretches, muttering about sleep. The rain stops completely, leaving only the faint drip from the eaves. You step outside for a moment. The air is cool and clean, the ground dark with moisture. The clouds are breaking apart, revealing a pale moon climbing the sky. The villa glows faintly under torchlight. The stone walls shine damp and gold, reflections dancing in puddles along the courtyard. You can hear distant laughter from the main house, the nobles dining late, their voices muffled but cheerful. It sounds like another world entirely. You look down at your hands, still marked with dirt, small cuts, and the smell of the stable that never leaves. There's something humbling about it. The rain washed the world clean, but not you, and somehow you prefer it that way. When you return inside, Marcus has already covered Flavius with a spare cloth. The boy sleeps soundly now. You light one more torch and hang it near the doorway, its flame flickering softly in the humid air. The night feels different after rain, quieter, almost kind. You sit for a while, letting the last drops fall from the roof, each one marking time in the endless rhythm of work and rest, noise and silence, life and repetition. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, and everything will start over. But for now, there's peace, the kind that only comes after a storm. The night settles deep and soft around the stable. The storm has passed, leaving the air cool and clean. And for a long while you hear nothing but the slow dripping of rainwater from the roof into the puddles below. The horses are calm again, their breathing low and steady, tails flicking occasionally in the dim light. The torches burn smaller now, their flames dancing lazily. You stand near the doorway, arms folded, feeling the quiet press of exhaustion that always comes after too much heat and too much noise. Then, faint at first, you hear the sound of voices. They are sharp and bright, the kind that belong to men who never lift anything heavier than a wine cup. The laughter grows louder as they approach, mixed with the clinking of harness buckles and the polished rhythm of hooves on stone. You glance toward the courtyard. The master's son, Gaius, has returned with his friend, the senator's son you heard about earlier at the market. Both young, both dressed far too finely for the hour. Behind them trail a few attendants, carrying torches and talking loudly, their shadows stretching long across the stable walls. Titus rushes forward before they even reach the door, bowing so low it looks painful. My lord, the stables are prepared. Your horses are brushed and waiting. Gaius waves a lazy hand. Good. I want the bays ready to run. The road's dry again, and my guest here hasn't seen how they move. Titus nods, snapping at you and Marcus with a quick gesture. You heard him. Saddles on now. You and Marcus move fast. There's no time for complaint. You grab the tack from the racks, the smell of leather and oil filling the space again. The horses sense the change instantly. They toss their heads, muscles tense under their glossy coats. You work quickly but carefully, sliding the bit into each mouth, tightening straps, checking buckles twice. The heat of the animals radiates through your palms. Gaius and his friend stand watching, talking idly. Their words drift through the air, half compliments, half arrogance. These are fine creatures, the senator's son says. You could enter them in the next races if you wished. Gaius smiles. Perhaps I will. The Circus Maximus could use something better than those tired city nags. They both laugh. The sound echoes sharply in the enclosed space, too loud for the hour. You focus on your work, pretending not to hear. When the saddles are secured, Gaius steps forward. You, he says, pointing at you. Bring me the grey. And you, he gestures toward Marcus. Fetch the brown mare for my friend. You nod and lead the grey stallion from its stall. The animal snorts, hooves striking sparks from the stone as it moves. Its eyes catch the torchlight like polished bronze. You whisper softly, calming it as you tighten the final strap. Gaius mounts in one smooth motion, adjusting the reins. The senator's son does the same, less gracefully but with confidence. They look absurdly regal against the backdrop of the humble stable, silk and gold and laughter against straw and sweat. Yet you have to admit, they look like they belong on those horses. The animals move beneath them, as though recognizing the difference in rank. Titus stands near the gate, wringing his hands. My lords, perhaps wait until morning. The road will still be slick from the rain. Gaius laughs. What's life without a little risk? Come, we'll ride only as far as the hill. Before anyone can stop them, they're gone, hooves pounding against wet stone, fading into the distance like thunder retreating over the hills. The stable is silent again, except for the rain's faint after-drip and the sound of Flavius breathing softly in his sleep. Marcus mutters, idiots. The muddle have them sliding before they reach the gate. You shake your head. Not our concern, but it is. Everything that happens to them becomes your concern eventually. You take a torch and step outside, peering into the road. The light catches the puddles, each one reflecting a fragment of the moon. The air is cool and smells of wet stone and olive leaves. Somewhere far off, you can still hear the echo of hooves. Marcus joins you, arms crossed. They'll be back soon enough, he says, probably demanding dry cloaks and wine. Probably, you agree. You both stand there in silence for a while, watching the night deepen. The world feels still, suspended between rain and calm. You can almost forget where you are, almost forget that tomorrow the cycle will begin again. After a while, Titus returns from the villa, muttering under his breath. "Fool boys," he says. "If they break their necks, it'll be me who gets blamed." He stops when he sees you. "Stay alert. When they return, you'll need to help with the horses." You nod, already knowing sleep is a distant dream tonight. The minutes stretch long, the torches burn lower. Somewhere nearby, a nightjar calls, its cry strange and hollow. You move through the stable one last time, checking each latch, adjusting feed. The routine keeps your mind steady. A small historical curiosity floats through your memory, something an old worker once told you. Romans believed that lightning purified the ground it struck, driving away evil spirits. Maybe that's why storms always feel cleansing afterward, you think? Even now, with the world still damp and the nobles gone chasing thrills, the air feels renewed. Marcus sits on a stool, half dozing. You lean against the doorframe, staring into the night. The wind shifts, bringing with it the faint smell of wet cypress. Time passes quietly. Then, faintly, the sound of hooves returns. Faster this time, urgent. You straighten immediately. Two shapes emerge from the darkness. Horses, slick with rain, but no riders. Marcus curses under his breath. By the gods. You move forward quickly, grabbing the reins before the animals can bolt. Their eyes are wild, rolling white in the torchlight. Mud splatters their legs up to the knees. They're panting, nostrils flaring. You can tell they've run hard, far harder than they should have. Titus appears again, voice sharp with panic. "Where are the riders?" No one answers. You lead the grey inside, whispering to calm it. The horse trembles, skin twitching under your touch. Marcus does the same with the mare. The silence in the stable is heavy now, broken only by the horse's ragged breathing. Then, far off, a shout. Two torches appear on the road, servants from the villa, calling names. You can just make out Gaius's voice, laughing, though his tone carries strain. "We're fine." The ground gave way near the bend. Titus exhales sharply, muttering a prayer of relief. "Go fetch them," he tells the servants, waving them on. Then he looks at you. "Clean these beasts and keep quiet. The master will hear nothing of this." You nod and begin wiping the mud from the horses, your hands steady even though your heart is still racing. Marcus works beside you, his face pale. "Could have gone worse," he says softly. "Could have gone a lot worse," you reply. When the riders finally return, their laughter is louder than before, forced but triumphant. Gaius pats his horse on the neck, as though the near accident were just another game. "See," he says to his friend, "I told you they'd hold steady." He doesn't thank you. He doesn't notice the trembling in the horse's legs. He simply tosses the reins to Titus and strolls toward the villa, already calling for wine. When they're gone, the stable sinks into silence again. You stand for a long moment beside the grey, running your hand down its neck, feeling its heart still pounding hard beneath the skin. You whisper softly the same meaningless words you always do, until it calms. Outside, the moon has climbed higher, pale and distant. The puddles reflect its light like scattered silver coins. The air smells of wet hay and quiet relief. Marcus yawns. Think we'll ever have a day that doesn't end like this. You smile faintly. Maybe when Rome runs out of nobles. He laughs once, tired and low. The torches burn almost to stubs. You finish your final check, closing the stall doors one by one. The world outside has gone still again, the kind of stillness that comes only after chaos and thunder, when everything feels briefly at peace. You stand in the doorway a moment longer, letting the cool air touch your skin, and then turn back inside. The night has claimed what's left of the day, and you're content to let it. The stable smells of smoke and wet straw by the time the sky begins to fade from black to grey. The night was restless after the noble's reckless ride, but somehow you managed to drift in and out of half-sleep. Sitting upright against a barrel with your head resting on your arm, the horses are quiet now, worn out but calm, their slow breathing matching the faint rustle of straw as they shift in their stalls. You stretch, the stiffness in your back reminding you how cold the stone floor can get once the torches burn out. Outside, the air carries that soft chill that comes before dawn. When the first faint color touches the clouds, but the light hasn't quite broken through. The rain has washed everything clean, leaving the scent of wet earth sharp and sweet. Marcus is already awake, crouched near the water trough, splashing his face. His hair sticks up like straw, and his eyes are half closed. "Morning already," he mutters. You rub your neck. "Barely. Titus will be up soon, though, then it's morning enough," he says, shaking water from his hands. You grab a broom and begin sweeping near the entrance. The floor is slick from the rainwater tracked in last night, and the sound of the bristles scraping against the stone feels almost too loud in the early quiet. A few birds begin to stir in the rafters, their soft coos blending with the faint jingling of tack. There's comfort in the morning routine. Even after chaos, everything returns to order, as if the stables themselves insist on balance. You check the feed buckets, refill the water troughs, and open the shutters to let the new light spill in. It glows pale gold, touching the edges of everything. The horses' coats, the dust in the air, your hands rough with yesterday's work. The villa courtyard beyond the stable is slowly coming to life. You hear distant voices, servants fetching water, cooks stoking fires, someone humming as they gather herbs. The smell of bread baking drifts faintly on the breeze. The world feels gentler at this hour, softer around the edges. A historical fact often forgotten. Roman villas, like this one, were small cities in themselves, self-contained worlds where everyone had a role. Bakers, smiths, scribes, and laborers all lived and worked within the same walls. The nobles liked to call it order. You know it as survival. You step outside to dump a pail of dirty water, watching the steam rise from the ground as the first rays of sunlight touch it. The fields beyond glisten faintly, still wet from the storm. For a moment, the landscape looks almost wholly green and gold and endless. You take a deep breath, the kind that feels like it reaches all the way to your bones. When you return, Marcus is sitting on a stool, trimming a piece of leather. The brown Mary's strap tore last night, he says. Titus will blame the gods if we don't fix it first. You nod and grab the orlin thread. The smell of oiled leather fills the air as you work side by side. The motion is simple. Push, pull, knot, cut. Your hands move automatically, guided by habit. Flavius limps in a few minutes later, pale but determined. He leans heavily on a broom handle like a makeshift cane. I can still help, he insists, before either of you can tell him otherwise. Marcus shakes his head. You'll do more harm than good, walking like that. You hand Flavius a rag, wipe down the bridles instead. No lifting. He nods, grateful, and takes a seat near the tack wall. His hands move slowly, carefully, tracing each line of leather as though memorizing it. You see a bit of yourself in him, that quiet eagerness to stay useful, even when everything hurts. The morning light grows stronger. The stables glow with it now. Shadows retreating into corners. You can see the fine dust hanging in the air, the slow rise and fall of the horses' chests, the faint shine on the polished buckles you spent hours perfecting. There's beauty in the monotony if you know where to look. Marcus glances at the door. Think Gaius will try riding again today? You snort softly. If he does, I'll let the horse decide what happens to him. Marcus laughs, the sound echoing softly against the beams. Now there's a thought. You finish stitching the strap and test the seam with a tug. It holds firm. For a moment you feel an odd sense of pride. It's a small thing, a single repair, but it means the next time that horse runs, it'll do so safely. No one will thank you for it, but you know. The horses know. That's enough. Outside, the sound of footsteps approaches. Titus enters, hair damp from washing, tunic freshly belted. His eyes sweep the stable quickly. Good, he says, voice still rough from sleep. Everything looks in order. Keep it that way. He pauses near Flavius, noticing the bruise. Still sore, Flavius nods. Stay off the heavier work today, Titus says. You've got another leg. Use that one for balance. It's the closest thing to kindness you've heard from him all week. Flavius grins, despite himself. Once Titus leaves, Marcus exhales dramatically. He can smile after all. I'll alert the priests. You chuckle and return to sweeping. The day has properly begun now, the soft quiet replaced by the rhythm of movement. More workers arrive, voices mingling with the sound of hooves and the steady scrape of brushes. You fall easily into the current, letting it carry you. A small historical curiosity comes to mind as you work. Some Roman estates, especially the wealthy ones, kept detailed records of every animal, age, color, even temperament. You wonder if somewhere in a ledger your name appears too, written beside a number or a task. Not a person, just an entry in the list of things that make the world move. By midday, the sunlight has fully entered the stable, pouring through the slats like molten gold. The dust dances in it. Marcus hums quietly as he oils a bridle. Flavius works slower but steady. The horses flick their ears at the sound of distant bells from the villa, a signal for the household's midday meal. You pour water into a cup and take a drink. It's warm but refreshing. The smell of bread from the kitchens grows stronger, making your stomach growl softly. Marcus catches the sound and grins. Go on, he says. If we're lucky, the cook left us something edible. You wipe your hands and head toward the courtyard. The light outside is blinding for a moment, and the world smells of wet grass and baking bread. Somewhere, a servant laughs. Somewhere else, a lyre plays faintly again. For a few steps, the air feels different. Freer, lighter, as though this morning, for once, isn't owned by anyone at all. You stop and look back toward the stable. The doorway glows with sunlight, horses shifting quietly inside, their shapes moving like shadows behind gold. For a fleeting second, you feel something close to peace, the kind that doesn't ask questions, the kind that just exists. Then Marcus shouts something about Titus wanting the tack polished again, and the spell breaks. You sigh, smiling despite yourself, and turn back toward the work that always waits. By the time the sun begins to dip again, the stables have taken on that soft golden tone that only appears between late afternoon and dusk. The dust in the air glows like amber, and the smell of hay thickens with warmth. The horses move slower now, their energy spent from the long day. Even the tools seem tired, brushes dull, buckets empty, everything coated in the faint sheen of work. Titus has gone to deliver a report to the master, leaving the rest of you with rare quiet, the kind of silence that settles not because there is nothing to say, but because no one needs to speak. You all know the rhythm by now. Feed, clean, water, check the doors, check again. The air hums faintly with the low buzz of flies and the muffled crackle of the cook fire drifting in from the villa courtyard. The smell of food carries on the breeze, roasted onions, herbs, the faint salt of fish. Your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since morning. Marcus glances up from his work, catching your expression, and grins. Dinner soon, he says. The nobles will have their fill. Then it's our turn. You nod, still brushing down the old chestnut mare. Aaliyah's coat shines softly in the dying light. She exhales slowly as you run the brush along her flank. The sound is steady, soothing, like waves against a shore. You murmur something under your breath, just a small sound meant for her alone. The stable has its own language at this hour, the steady crunch of straw, the low snort of breath, the gentle clink of chains. You've learned to read it over the years, every sound carrying meaning. A restless horse means a coming storm, a still one means peace. Tonight, everything feels settled. Historians still argue whether Roman stable hands like you were considered servants or laborers. Some records call them property, others skilled workers. You've never cared much for the word itself. You just know that the horses trust your hands more than they trust any noble's command, and that's worth something. Marcus finishes stacking the last of the feed sacks and wipes his forehead. You ever think, he says, how strange it is that we spend all day caring for animals richer than us? You smile faintly. At least they don't talk back. He laughs. True enough, though some bite harder than nobles, you hang the brush back on the wall and stretch. The day's ache runs through your shoulders, a dull but honest pain. Outside, the sky turns a deeper shade of orange. Shadows stretch long across the courtyard. You hear voices drifting from the villa, laughter, clinking cups, music. Soon it will be your turn to eat. You and the others gather near the corner of the stable where the old wooden table stands. It's small, scarred by knives and burn marks, but sturdy. Marcus brings a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. Flavius follows with a jug of watered wine and a small wedge of cheese, his limp more noticeable in the low light. You all sit, the four of you, Marcus, Flavius, yourself, and the quiet boy from the forge, whose name you always forget. The stable door stays open, letting in the cool air. Same feast as always, Marcus says, breaking the bread into uneven pieces. Bread, cheese, and Titus's bad temper, you reply. He grins and raises his cup. To another glorious day in paradise. You clink your cup lightly against his, smiling. The wine tastes faintly of clay and smoke, but it's enough to wash down the day. As you eat, the talk turns to the usual things. Gossip from the villa, rumors from the city, stories that stretch the truth just enough to make them interesting. Flavius claims a senator's wife once fell in love with a charioteer. Marcus insists that the emperor himself keeps secret stables beneath the palace, guarded by priests. Historians still argue about that. Marcus says dramatically, mimicking a scholar's tone. Some say the horses can even talk. Flavius snorts. If they could, they'd complain more than we do. Laughter fills the air, soft but genuine. It feels good to laugh here, surrounded by hay and tired faces and the low murmur of night settling in. A quiet moment follows, the kind that falls naturally when food runs low and thoughts grow slower. The sounds of the villa drift, faintly, the distant strum of a lyre, a burst of laughter, the splash of water from the fountain. You can almost imagine what it must be like up there. Candles glowing, silver dishes shining, soft fabric brushing across marble floors. But here, at your small table, the warmth feels more real. The bread rough but filling, the wine sour but shared. You think about how strange comfort can be, how it hides in the smallest places, waiting to be noticed. You glance toward the horses. They stand quiet in their stalls, heads lowered, eyes half closed. The torches cast long shadows that sway gently with each movement. The light flickers across the beams, the walls, the rough texture of wood worn, smooth by hands over generations. A small detail few remember. Romans sometimes hung charms in stables, tiny bronze bells meant to ward off envy or ill fortune. You've seen one still hanging near the door, green with age. You reach out and touch it lightly, listening to the faint ring it makes. It's barely more than a whisper, but it feels old, steady, eternal. Marcus pours the last of the wine into your cup. For luck, he says. Luck doesn't visit here, you reply softly. Only habit. He nods, eyes half-lidded from fatigue. Then let's drink to habit. You do, the last sip, warm and bitter. Flavius leans back, stretching his sore leg. Sometimes I wonder, he says, if the horses ever dream. About running, maybe. About open fields. You think about it for a moment. Maybe they dream of quiet. Just standing still. No saddles, no orders. Marcus chuckles. You sound like you're dreaming that yourself. Maybe I am. The laughter fades again. The sky has turned from orange to purple, and the first stars begin to appear. The torches crackle softly. You feel the day's weight begin to lift from your shoulders, replaced by a strange calm. You clear the table, brushing crumbs into your hand. The smell of hay and smoke fills the air, mingled with the faint sweetness of the night breeze. One by one, your companions drift off, Marcus to check the horses one last time, Flavius to his cot in the corner, the forge boy disappearing quietly into the shadows. You stay seated for a moment longer, letting the silence grow. There's something sacred about this hour, the pause between labor and sleep, where the world feels briefly balanced. Outside, the moon rises slowly over the hills, pale and watchful. You can hear the soft rustle of trees, the faint trickle of water from the fountain. The villa lights flicker like stars behind the walls. You stand, stretch once more, and walk to the door. The bell above it sways gently, its sound barely audible. You whisper, almost without meaning to, tomorrow, same as today. And somehow, that thought doesn't feel sad. It feels steady, certain, like the turning of the wheel or the breathing of a horse, endless, simple, and enough. The stable sinks into its slowest rhythm after the meal, when the lamps burn low and the outside world fades into quiet. The horses stand still now, half asleep, their sides rising and falling like the steady tide of the sea. Every sound in this hour feels softened, wrapped in straw and darkness, the drip of water from the eaves, the faint creak of a loose hinge, the slow, even hum of breath. You move carefully between the stalls, with a small oil lamp in hand, the flame trembling in the draught. Shadows ripple across the walls, stretching long and thin before curling back again. You check each animal the same way you always do, a gentle touch to the flank, a soft word, a glance at the hooves. Routine holds everything together here. Without it, the stillness might crack. Marcus has already rolled onto his side on the pile of hay near the door, eyes closed but not quite sleeping. Flavius lies curled in the corner, his injured leg propped on a bundle of cloth. His face looks peaceful now, slack and young in the dim light. You make a mental note to fetch fresh cloth for him in the morning, something cleaner than what he has now. The air smells of oil and warm straw. You open the small side window for a moment, letting in the cool night breeze. It carries the scent of olive trees and the faint, distant whisper of the Tiber. Even from here, you can almost hear it, that gentle, eternal sound that's been part of every day you can remember. Historians still argue whether Roman servants like you ever felt free in their work. Some write that labor brought dignity, others say it erased identity. You don't bother with either thought. You simply know that, in this moment, with the soft breath of animals and the whisper of wind, you feel something close to peace. You move to the chestnut mare's stall. Alia shifts slightly, turning her head toward you, eyes glinting in the lamp's light. You stroke her neck and feel the warmth of her skin under your palm. Sleep easy, you whisper. You've done enough for one life. She exhales softly, as if answering. You stand there for a while, hand resting against her, both of you unmoving. There's an old superstition among stable hands that horses can see what people cannot, that they notice the spirits who wander between night and dawn. You don't believe it, but sometimes, in these hours, you understand how the story started. Their eyes reflect the lamplight like small pieces of sun, bright in the dark. They always seem to be looking at something just past you, something you can't quite see. The lamp flickers. You set it down on the low ledge near the center post and sit beside it, your body giving in to the weight of the day. Your hands ache, your back feels heavy, but it's the good kind of tired, the kind that comes from work done right. Marcus stirs behind you. Still awake, you hum softly in response. He opens one eye, squinting at the light. You ever think about what you'd do if you didn't work here? You shrug. What else would I do? I don't know, he says, voice drifting toward sleep. Maybe go north. Maybe see the sea. You smile faintly. The sea smells worse than the stables. He chuckles weakly, eyes closing again. Still worth seeing. The silence returns. You sit for a while longer, watching the lamp flame move like a living thing. It bends with every draught, shrinking, stretching, steadying again. You think about how many nights have looked exactly like this. The same smell of hay, the same sounds, the same stars rising outside the same cracked window. It should feel repetitive, but instead it feels like safety. There's comfort in predictability. You know where every rope hangs, where every floorboard creaks, which horse will stir first when the wind shifts. You even know how the night sounds before it happens. The quiet before the owl calls, the faint click of cooling wood, the sigh of wind under the eaves. You glance toward the small altar in the corner, a few stones, a faded carving of a horse's head, and a clay dish holding the stub of an old candle. No one remembers who placed it there, but you still light it once a week. It's said to bring luck to the animals. You strike a spark and light the candle now, watching the flame catch. The smell of beeswax fills the air. You whisper a few words, half prayer, half thought. Keep them calm. Keep us steady. A scholar once told you that the Romans prayed to too many gods, that their faith was scattered across hundreds of small moments, one god for travel, one for home, one for fields, one for horses. Maybe that's what makes it work. You don't need one grand protector, just small mercies. The horses shift again. You rise and move to close the shutters halfway, leaving enough space for air to move. The moonlight sneaks through, silvering the edges of the beams. Everything glows faintly now. The hay, the ropes, even your hands. It's strange how light finds beauty in the most ordinary places. You walk toward the doorway, stepping out just enough to look up. The sky above the villa is clear, scattered with bright stars. You can see the outline of the cypress trees against the horizon, their tops swaying gently. The world feels vast, and yet this tiny piece of it, this stable, these horses, this moment feels complete. Alea whinnies softly behind you, a low sound like a sigh. You turn back, smiling. "All right," you say softly. "I'm here." You sit again on the straw, leaning your back against the wooden beam. The lamp flickers beside you, steady and warm. You close your eyes. For a long time, you simply listen to the faint rustle of straw, the breathing of the animals, the distant song of the night insects. This is the hour when thoughts drift but don't sting. When memories soften and time feels slower, you think of the river, the storm, the laughter at dinner, the noble's arrogance, and the quiet moments between. All of it part of the same day, all of it looping together like a song that never really ends. You feel the pull of sleep now, gentle and irresistible. The last thing you hear before drifting off is the small, steady sound of a horse shifting its weight, the rhythm of life continuing, quiet and eternal. You wake to the faint chill that comes when night begins to thin. The lamp beside you has gone out, leaving only a faint curl of smoke rising into the dim air. The stable is still quiet, but not silent, the kind of quiet that belongs only to deep night, when the world is breathing in its sleep. The horses shift softly in their stalls, hooves brushing the straw. Somewhere in the rafters, a pigeon coos once, then settles. You stay seated for a moment, your back against the wooden post, listening. There's something peaceful about this hour, before even Titus wakes, before the roosters announce the next dawn. The air feels cool on your face. You can still smell the faint sweetness of beeswax from the little altar candle. Now a small pool of hardened wax on the stone. Marcus is still asleep near the doorway, his arm thrown across his chest, mouth slightly open. Flavius snores quietly in the corner, the sound barely audible. For a few long moments, the stillness feels like a gift. You could stay here forever, just you, the dark and the slow, even heartbeat of the stables. You rise slowly, careful not to wake anyone, and step toward the open door. Outside, the sky is pale at the edges, the first suggestion of morning coloring the horizon. The moon still lingers high above, thin and distant, fading into light. The ground glistens faintly with dew, and the air smells clean, washed of yesterday's dust. You walk a few steps into the courtyard, bare feet brushing the damp earth. The villa looms ahead, its windows dark, its columns faintly glowing in the half-light. The fountain in the courtyard trickles softly, steady and calm. You sit on the edge of its basin, dipping your fingers into the cool water. Historians still argue whether servants like you ever paused to admire mornings. Some say laborers never had time for beauty. But beauty has a way of finding you even when you're not looking. The water catches the dawn light in ripples, each one turning the world upside down for a heartbeat. You remember stories from when you were younger of farmers who rose before dawn to greet the sun as if it were a living thing. You think of that now, watching the slow growth of light over the horizon. The sky deepens into gold, the color spreading like spilled oil, warm and quiet. From somewhere behind you, a soft sound, hooves shifting, a low snort. You glance back toward the stable. The horses have started to stir. They sense the morning before you do. The first to wake is always the same. Aaliyah, you see her silhouette through the open door, her head lifting, mane catching the faint light. She makes a low sound, almost like a sigh. You stand, brushing dew from your hands, and return to her. The stable smells different at dawn, cooler, fresher, the hay damp and fragrant. You open the half door of her stall and step inside. She nudges your arm lightly, as though impatient for her routine. "All right, I'm here," you murmur. You fetch the bucket and fill her trough with water, the sound of pouring echoing softly in the stillness. She drinks deeply, then raises her head, droplets shining on her muzzle like tiny stars. You brush her mane, the strokes slow and steady, each one releasing the faint sweet scent of oil and hay. Marcus stirs behind you. "You're up early," he mumbles. "So are you," you say, not turning. He grunts and sits up, stretching. "My back feels like I slept on a rock." "That's because you did." He laughs, the sound soft and lazy. He stands, yawns, and starts checking the other stalls. The two of you work in silence for a while. The first birds begin to sing outside, their voices high and clear. The sound feels new every morning, even though it's the same song repeated endlessly. Flavius wakes next, limping slightly but smiling. "I dreamt I was racing chariots," he says. "Won every one." Marcus chuckles. "Then stay asleep next time. You'll live longer that way." The laughter fades into the soft rhythm of chores. You spread new straw, refill the feed bins, and open the windows to let the light spill in. The stable begins to glow again, gold dust swirling in the air. A strange calm settles over you as you work. The chaos of yesterday feels far away now, as if it happened to someone else. All that exists in this moment is movement, quiet, measured, necessary. There's something sacred about that simplicity. You pause for a moment, leaning against the wooden beam. The smell of hay, the warmth of the animals, the golden haze of dust, it all blends together until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. You think about what Marcus said the night before, about the sea. You've never seen it. You imagine it now, vast, endless, restless. The opposite of the stables, which are small and still and safe. You wonder if you'd like the sea's sound, or if it would unsettle you. Maybe both. There's an old saying, one you once overheard from a passing merchant. The man who lives with horses learns patience, and the man who lives by the river learns peace. You've done both, you realize. Maybe that's why the days no longer bother you the way they once did. Every repetition is just another turn in the same quiet wheel. Marcus's voice pulls you from your thoughts. You ever think this is what forever feels like? You look over at him. If it is, it isn't so bad. He smiles. You're strange. Maybe, you reply, but strange people sleep better. The light grows stronger now. The beams stretch long across the floor, touching every corner of the stable. You hear the faint bell from the villa's chapel, signaling the first hour of morning. It rings clear and pure, the sound carrying across the fields. Flavius makes the sign of the cross out of habit, murmuring something under his breath. You nod to him, not out of piety, but out of quiet respect for the rhythm of things. The horses stand calm again, their coats gleaming softly in the light. You run your hand along Elia's neck one last time before moving toward the doorway. The world beyond is bright now. Green fields still wet with dew, olive trees glinting silver in the sun, and a faint mist rising from the river. You step outside, stretching, your eyes squinting against the brightness. The day is new, but it feels like every other day, and somehow that sameness feels right. Behind you, the stable hums with life again. The sound of brushes, hooves, quiet voices, the familiar music of your world. You take a deep breath, the cool morning air filling your lungs. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster calls. It's a new day, exactly like the last, and that's what makes it perfect. The sun lifts over the horizon again, slow and unhurried, spilling light over the villa's tiled roofs and the wide stone courtyard. The stables glow gold as the day begins, dust and warmth rising together like faint smoke. You stand in the doorway, arms crossed, feeling the familiar pull of another long day waiting to unfold. The smell of the world changes hour by hour. First wet earth, then warm hay, then the sharp temps of sweat as the sun climbs higher. The rhythm never really stops, it only pauses between moments. The horses are already awake and fed, their muscles gleaming softly in the morning light. The stable itself seems to breathe with them. Marcus walks past you, carrying a bucket, whistling a tune that you can never quite place. It changes every day, but somehow always sounds the same. Titus is already shouting, he says with a grin. He must have run out of patience before breakfast. You laugh softly. He never had much to begin with. The sound of the overseer's voice drifts faintly from the courtyard. Orders, numbers, the constant rustle of management. You've learned to filter it out, the way you filter the hum of flies or the distant barking of dogs. You only hear what matters. Today's tasks are simple. Polish the tack again, mend a halter, scrub the troughs. The kind of work that fills a life without announcing itself. You pick up a brush and begin oiling the leather straps. The scent of olive oil mixes with the smell of hay. Each stroke leaves a dark sheen, the small proof of effort that no one will ever mention. The quiet is broken by a group of servants rushing past the stable door, carrying bolts of cloth and baskets of fruit. Gaius must be leaving for the city. You can hear him shouting orders from the villa steps, full of life and authority. His voice carries across the courtyard, sharp and careless. Marcus glances up. Another race, you think? Another audience? You reply. He smirks. Same thing, isn't it? You both share a brief laugh before returning to work. There's no bitterness in it anymore, just a dull understanding. People like him are born into speed and applause. People like you into rhythm and routine. And in some quiet way, that feels all right. Flavius limps in from the far end of the barn, carrying a broom. The bruise on his leg has faded to a faint yellow, and he moves easier now. Titus says we'll need extra water ready by noon. He says, guests might pass through. You nod. We'll manage. He grins, setting to work. The broom bristles scrape softly against the stone. The sound blends with the rustle of straw, the thud of hooves, the faint hum of Marcus's whistling. Time slides forward in gentle increments. You lose track of it, as always, not by distraction, but by familiarity. The day stretches and folds, each hour marked only by light. Historians still argue whether the lives of workers like you ever truly changed from one century to the next, whether time meant progress or simply repetition. You don't need a scholar to answer that. You already know. The world turns, but the work stays the same, and maybe that's its own kind of permanence. By midday, the sun burns bright above the fields. The air hums with heat, but inside the stable it stays cool, shaded, calm. The smell of oiled wood and animals has become something like home. You sit for a moment beside Elia's stall, resting your back against the wall. The horse turns her head toward you, nostrils flaring softly. You and I, you murmur, we live the same day, don't we? She exhales, and for a brief instant you imagine it's an answer. The villa bells ring in the distance, not urgent, not solemn, just part of the rhythm. Lunch hour, Marcus stretches and tosses you a crust of bread from his pack. You catch it mid-air, smiling. Luxury, you say. Don't eat it too fast, he replies. It's the finest grain Titus didn't steal. You laugh quietly, breaking the bread in half and handing him the larger piece. The two of you sit in the shade, chewing in companionable silence. The sound of insects hums low in the background. Beyond the villa walls, the fields shimmer under the sunlight. Funny, Marcus says, after a while, how every day feels the same, yet somehow different. Because we survive it, you reply, that makes each one new. He nods, thoughtful, and leans back against the trough. The afternoon passes easily, filled with the kind of tasks that require more movement than thought. You carry water from the well, scrape old dirt from the corners, wipe down the harnesses again. The repetition steadies you. The world outside might rise and fall. Emperors, taxes, storms, laughter, but here everything is measured, predictable. When the sun begins to set, the stables take on their golden hue once more. You finish your work slowly, deliberately, unwilling to rush the quiet. The horses are calm, their bodies gleaming in the amber light. The smell of evening settles, hay, oil, wood, and the faint sweetness of dust. You lean against the doorway again, watching the horizon fade. The same fields, the same hills, the same soft wind brushing the olive trees. Yet somehow it never loses its peace. Marcus walks past, wiping his hands on his tunic. Same time tomorrow. You grin. Always. He nods and disappears toward the servants' quarters, whistling softly. You stay a moment longer, alone with the sound of the horses and the slow creak of the stable beams. The day folds in on itself, the edges soft and glowing. You take one last breath of the cool air, tasting the faint salt of sweat and the sweetness of straw. The light fades completely, and you step inside to close the doors. The world outside grows quiet, but inside the warmth lingers. You sit on the old stool near the altar, eyes half closed, hands still smelling faintly of leather and grain. You whisper the same words you always do at the end of a day, not a prayer, not a wish, just a thought. Tomorrow will wait. And in that small, steady certainty, the world feels whole again. The night returns slowly, like a blanket drawn over the world. The last sounds of the villa fade into stillness. No footsteps now, no laughter, no orders. Just the low rhythm of crickets outside and the gentle sigh of horses within. The air is cool, touched by the faint smell of hay and oil. You sit quietly back against the wooden post, feeling the slow weight of rest settling over your shoulders. Your eyes trace the dim shapes in the dark, the beams above, the outline of the stalls, the faint shimmer of moonlight on metal. Everything is exactly as it should be. The world, for once, asks nothing of you. You let your breath fall into rhythm with the horse's breathing, each exhale slower than the last, each heartbeat softer. You think of the river's whisper, the warmth of the morning sun, the sound of rain tapping the roof, small pieces of peace folded into memory. The day has already melted away, like wax into water. Tomorrow will come as it always does, gentle and familiar, bringing the same sounds, the same motions, the same steady calm. And you will rise with it, without hurry, without worry. For now, you close your eyes. The stable hums quietly around you. The horses shift once, then still. The world outside fades completely into silence. You breathe in one last time, hay, wood, calm. And then you drift, as the night deepens, slow and kind, carrying you somewhere warm and endless.